Hello and welcome everyone to the world famous Adventurers Club of Los Angeles. My name is Andrew Medina and I am number 1212. Means I am the 1212th member to be admitted here. We are here. We are still shut down for the moment, but we're still bringing programs to you. So if you like what you see, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking this video. It helps us out a lot. And I am joined today by Jimmy Gosser. Thank you for joining me today, sir.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit about you. What's your story, man?
Like you said, my name's Jim, and I'm just a farm boy from Kansas originally. But I decided to learn how to be a helicopter pilot, so I went to flight school out of right in college there, and did some instructing, and then spent a couple years up in Alaska and flying tours up there. And then I got pretty adventurous and ended up going up to the Himalayan country of Nepal. And I was there for a little over a year. So I now have come back from that and have spent the last 3 years living in Oklahoma, and I fly EMS helicopters for Air Evac Life Team.
That's very adventurous. So how did you decide you wanted to be a helicopter pilot? What was sort of the initial inspiration for you to do that?
Well, aviation has always been in my family. My granddad actually was a mechanic in the Navy for P-3 Orions, which is just a type of an airplane. He was a part of the group that flew into the eye of Hurricane David. After he'd gotten out of the Navy, he was with NOAA and NASA, working with them. And then my dad also built airplanes in California, in Long Beach, for McDonnell Douglas back in the 90s. So aviation's just been in my blood, and fortunately, I was the first one of my family to become a pilot. So it was kind of my dad and I's dream growing up that I would be able to start flying. And I actually had a full ride scholarship to go play football at a small junior college in Kansas, and ended up that they had a helicopter program. And so once I kind of went down there and checked it out, that seemed to be what I wanted to do. And so just, went to school for it, and it took about, it was a 2-year program. And then I started teaching for the college there. And that was in Dodge City, Kansas.
Fantastic. What was it like the very first time you went up in a plane or a helicopter? What was it like that up by yourself? What did it feel like?
So the first time I ever soloed an aircraft was it was in Dodge City during flight school, and I only had about 20 hours of instruction of actual flight time in the aircraft. And that's an FAA regulation. That's the lowest you can have for that particular type of aircraft. But to be brash, I mean, I was scared. I was scared as hell, and really nervous. I had really good training, top of the line training for sure at that particular flight school. But there's just nothing that prepares you for it. You can do a million takeoffs and landings and pickups and set downs in a helicopter, and there's nothing that feels like it feels when you first go up by yourself. So sweating bullets the whole time, just nervous. I don't want to wreck this, $300,000 machine. And so yeah, it was pretty gut wrenching for sure.
Okay, so you started flying in junior college, then you went to Alaska for a little bit. How did you get up there? What were you doing up there?
So the flight school that I was attached to, that I was teaching for, they had really good relationships with a company up there in out of Ketchikan called Temsco, and so I met the hour requirements and the flight requirements to take that job, and so I ended up going up there in the spring of 2014. And then training lasted about a month there, and then they ship you off to either one of the two tour bases at that time was Skagway which is kind of in the northern part of the southeast Alaska, kind of right along the coast there. And then the other one is in Juneau. So I was in the smaller one up in Skagway, very small town. There's probably 300 or 500 people that live there year round. And then, of course, in the middle of the summer, with all the tourists and tourism workers that come up there, it swells to, I think, a couple thousand. So I spent 2 summers up there. I say 2 years, but 2 summers up there, about 8 or 9 months apiece. And we were flying right off the shoreline. There was docks where the cruise ships are, and then our base was right next to it where the helipads are. And we would take those cruise ship passengers up to the glaciers, and give them kind of an air tour for 20, 25 minutes. And then we would land and spend probably about 45 minutes on the glacier. And, we would get out and actually show them different features of the glacier, moulins or the moraines on the side of the glacier or what have you. So I kind of doubled as, I was a helicopter tour pilot there, but I was also somewhat of a glacier guide. We did have a team during the busy season that would come in, and we would just act as the air pilot, the air tour guide. And so we would actually drop off the passengers, and they would check out the glacier with the group of glacier guides that was there. So, and then, but on the weekends we had to do it ourselves. So it was we loaded them at down in Skagway, got them up on the glacier, got them all out ourselves, and guided them around the glacier and showing them giant, massive moulins, which is basically a giant hole in the middle of the glacier. So, and that was, just spent a couple summers up there, just enjoying the mountains, and did a lot of hiking and camping and fishing and, salmon and crab fishing as well. So just had a blast.
That sounds really great, especially the fishing part. We had a guy come by a little bit a few weeks ago talk about his time fishing up there, and it just sounds like a great time. What are some sort of interesting things you learned about being on the glacier, or about sort of glaciers in general, sort of in being in that area?
Some of the unique things about glaciers, they're always in snowy areas. It's the only way that they can develop. They typically develop off of an ice field. The vast majorities of glaciers develop off of an ice field. So you'll get, a couple hundred feet of snow each season in the mountains in these particular regions. And eventually, over time, when that ice or that snow continues to build and build on itself, it'll compact down into ice. And so that's how you get basically just a bunch of ice filled in the valleys. And then once that ice starts to build up high enough and kind of get up around the top of the peaks or even over the peaks, it'll actually start to flow once it builds up high enough, and it'll kick off glaciers in some of the surrounding valleys. And one of the most interesting things that I learned is how dynamic they are and how quickly they can move, and how quickly that that some of them are receding. Some of them are growing, but the vast majority of them are receding. There's places that I've landed, 5 or 6 years ago, that just don't exist now. Those glaciers are completely gone, or they're so slopey, or they're so covered in rock that you actually can't see the glacier anymore. So a lot of glaciology books that we had to kind of study and read into a little bit to develop some of our knowledge while we were out there walking around and showing people things, and then also some geology as well. So it's pretty neat to be able to stand on the glacier, and you can look up at the side of the mountain and show them what we call a trim line, which, there are different demarcation lines of the trim line as you look up the mountain. But it kind of gives you a timeline of where the glacier was in years past. So, but very, very dynamic and dangerous places. So,
Absolutely. So, the area you were in around Skagway, how, if the glaciers aren't there, if the glaciers are melting, does that impact tourism at all? Do you think, how will glaciers receding have any sort of impact on the town itself or on the economy or on the sort of lifestyle there?
Yes, eventually it will have an impact, but that impact there won't be felt for, I would say, several hundred years. There are no glaciers immediately in Skagway. Like from the actual town of Skagway, you can kind of barely only see like one glacier up on a mountain that's kind of south of across the bay of Skagway, but or across the inlet rather. But really, because there's no glaciers immediately around Skagway, my tour that I was doing was one of maybe only 5 or 10 tours that actually went to glaciers and saw the glaciers themselves. Most of the stuff that happens in Skagway pretty well stays around Skagway. You might go out on the ocean, you might go up a river, you might go hiking. But being in a helicopter, we can obviously get everywhere a lot faster. So it's going to take several hundred years because the Juneau ice field is just right there. We're kind of on the northern end of it there in Skagway, and it's massive. So, I mean, the ice there in places is still a couple thousand feet thick. So,
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. So you did that for 2 summers, and then you went to Nepal next?
Yeah. So my second summer in Alaska, I had another friend that was flying there, and we had gotten contacted, or actually we saw an ad online for Nepal helicopter pilot. We're looking for 2 of them, type of thing. And so we sent out an email and just kind of inquiring about it. And they basically said, you meet all the requirements. We need you here yesterday, type of thing. So we were flying a particular helicopter in Alaska that was called an AS-350. And that's what they were flying in the Himalayas as well. And so because we had the mountainous time, we had kind of the poor weather experience, and then we had a lot of time in that particular airframe of helicopter, we were able to go over there very rapidly. So the season ends in Alaska in that particular area right at the end of September. And so by the end of October, I was already in Nepal.
So you said they needed you there yesterday. Why was there such a need of helicopter pilots? Why did they need you so bad?
Well, it's very difficult in Nepal to find to fill a position that's not already filled with somebody that is from Nepal that has the experience. So what they run into as the industry there has grown, there's been so many vacancies of these helicopter slots, and there's not enough experienced Nepali pilots to fill them. In aviation, it's an insurance game. Somebody might be able to actually do the job, but if their logbook isn't thick enough, meaning they don't have enough hours, they can't be covered by the company's insurance. So a lot of times, Nepali companies, and they still do this to this day, they rely on experienced foreigners, expats that will come over there and kind of take the reins. So they had 2 openings immediately there, and I was able to fill one of them.
And so what did they have you doing over there? Like what was the deal?
So the main job over there is high mountain rescue. I was a part of a high mountain rescue company. That's what we did. And so any tourist or trekker or climber, mountaineer that would go into the mountains and either maybe get in a rock slide or in an avalanche. Most of it was altitude sickness, so they would get up high enough, 15, 16, 17,000 feet, and pretty much anything higher than that, where they would just get overworked and overstressed, and then they weren't acclimatized well enough to that particular height of the atmosphere, and so they would not be able to continue because they were just so fatigued. And so we would go up there and we would rescue them. Generally, it wasn't on random places on trails, and we didn't have to do a ton of hunting for them. They were able to sometimes, or most of the time, get to some kind of a tea house or a very small hut, and then somebody else that was, some other Nepali that was there would typically send for help. And so we were, most of the time, knew where to find these people, but not all the time. Sometimes it involved stopping to ask for directions. So, yeah.
What was your craziest, like, did you have any crazy stories? What was your craziest story while you were doing that?
Well, so that was the main job, was search and rescue. The main crazy story there from doing that was really, I was going up to a place called Annapurna Base Camp, and that's kind of in the western third of Nepal. And as I was heading up there, the weather was kind of iffy, and unfortunately, it's not like flying in the Western society where we've got weather stations everywhere, very good radar. You can read the weather very well. In the Himalayas, that's not the case. So a lot of times you'll kind of see what it is down low, down Kathmandu or Pokhara or places that are fairly low elevation, and then sometimes you just have to go and check it out and see if you can make it through. And so, and if you can't, you turn around, you go back, or you land where you're at. And so that, just a short story, that's kind of what happened to me in this particular instance. I was heading up to Annapurna Base Camp, which is 13,500 feet. And on my way up, I had passed a couple of very small villages. And to my left, as I'm kind of heading up this mountain, this valley, rather, to my left, the ridge was about 22,000 feet high. And the mountain to my right is Machaputre, the Fishtail Mountain, very popular mountain there in Nepal. I think it's somewhere around that as well, 24,000 feet. So pretty high ridges on both sides of me. I'm only down at, maybe 10,000 feet. So I've got 15,000 foot mountains on both sides of me. So there's nowhere to go but, up the valley or down the valley. And the weather was, the cloud layer was kind of maybe only 300 or 400 feet off the deck. So I was fairly low creeping up into this valley. And eventually, as I was going up, the valley goes up this way and the cloud layer was kind of level. Eventually, you kind of run into that point where you just can't go up any higher because the clouds met the ground. And of course, we call that fog when the clouds meet the ground. But anyway, so I stopped, and luckily there happened to be a little bit of an opening there in the valley, a little bit of a wider spot. So I turned around, and of course, just happened to be my luck that day. It had shut in on me from behind. So I was actually just stuck in this valley, very low, 200 foot above the deck, and just stuck. And so there happened to be one little patch of grass along a trail next to this giant Class 5 rapid river. And we landed there, and then initially we shut down, and it was me, and I had a passenger that was actually going up there to work. He was a worker at the Annapurna Base Camp, where I was going to pick up some of the injured hikers. And we had to hike, it was about an hour down the trail, downhill, to just to let everybody know that we were safe, because they had lost GPS tracking of us. Nobody could see us. We couldn't talk to anybody from the helicopter there. So anyway, so we hiked down, we get to this little tea house, and I use a sat phone there. Hey, I let everybody know we're okay. I'm going to be spending the night here because it's closed in on us. And I ended up hiring a couple of porters and just a couple of Nepalis that followed me up with a basket back to the helicopter. We tied all the blades down so they wouldn't be flapping in the wind. And then we actually removed the battery from the helicopter. And then I had one of them hike the battery down to that tea house. And they basically had a 55-gallon drum that was just full of water. That was their hot water heater. And they had a diesel block heater just like submerged in this tank. And so they put the lid on it. And since it was nice and warm, we just set the battery right on it. So the reason we had to take the battery is because it got so cold out at night up in the mountains there that it would zap your battery. So we would go up there the next morning and we wouldn't be able to start up. So we had to get that battery out of the helicopter. And of course, the next morning, got up, it was Clear Blue 22, and we hiked it back up the mountain, hooked it together, and away we went. But I had to rough it that night. There was just a little plywood couch that I would slept on that night with a little tiny sleeping bag. And so that's one of the kind of a common thing that would happen there. And when you get stuck, you just have to hike around until you find some place to shelter. So.
And was there any kind of like learning curve going from the helicopters that you'd been flying in Alaska to the ones that you've been flying in Nepal? How was it?
Well, there wasn't much of a learning curve initially because it's the same machine and most of the same gauges, and so flying it was no problem. Now the operation side of it, what we were actually doing, the places we were going to land, had never been to. I was going places that nobody had ever put a helicopter. So, it was always just fly by the seat of your pants and you play the cards you're dealt. You work with what's there. And so the Nepali government, thank God, they kind of slow the newcomers down a little bit. They say, okay, you're unrestricted up to 10,000 feet, so you can go and you can land anywhere under 10,000 feet. And then once you've been there for a little bit and you've done some landings, you've kind of proved yourself, then they'll clear you up to like 14 or 15,000 feet. And then after that, the next clearance is like you're unrestricted. You can just go, do your thing. And so I had never landed a helicopter higher than maybe 6,500 or 7,000 feet. And so, my first landing, the first time I ever kind of broke my own personal record was just landing at the Lukla Airport, which is the last place you can fly into to start the Everest Trail when you start hiking up towards the Everest Base Camp. And so, and that's about 9,000 feet, give or take, a little bit more than that, I think. But the learning curve is just learning slowly, increasing your altitude, because as you go up in altitude, the performance of the aircraft diminishes quite rapidly. At first I would take it very slow, go up to 10,000, do a couple landings there, and then go up to 12, do a couple landings there. And then most of the time, most of my landings were recorded somewhere between 12 and 14,000 feet. And then I do have quite a few number of landings above that. My highest landing to date was a place called Gorak, which is right next to Everest Base Camp, and it's right at 17,000 feet. And I've done several landings there and did some rescues there, picking up injured hikers and dropping off supplies and things of that nature. The highest I ever took a helicopter to get up over a ridge. We were kind of one of the other small things that you do when you're in aviation and you're they call the type of company is a charter on demand. It's a Part 135 company, basically. You just do whatever the job is. So we had a couple researchers from the Japanese government that wanted to study all the glaciers in the Himalayas. And so they came to us and I was appointed the job. And I got to take the helicopter up to 22,000 feet, flying in and around the mountains of Amanda Blam and kind of around Everest. Obviously, Everest is 29,000 feet, so I was still looking up to it at that point. But I did get to take the helicopter that high, so that was pretty interesting. And just taking it slow and not trying to rush things at that altitude. That was a huge learning curve because you don't learn that stuff in flight school. The highest place in the lower 48 states is Mount Whitney, I believe. So it's like 14.5. So and I've landed way higher than that. So there's just no way to learn that.
Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off there. But how is like flying at high altitudes different than flying at low altitudes? Like what do you need to think about at 16,000 feet that you don't need to think about at like 6,000 feet?
Sure. Well, the only real thing I have to compare it to as far as operationally is, I guess you compare it to a car. So if you overstress the engine of a car, you might see a temperature spike in your oil, or you'll see a temperature spike in the coolant, or you might redline the RPM, right? So you overspeed the engine. Well, in an aircraft, it's the same thing. Even though it's a turbine helicopter and it burns jet fuel, just like a big jet, you can still burn it up. You can get it too hot. You can speed it too fast. and then you can just over torque it. So you're just demanding way more power than the engine can actually give, and so that'll actually slow it down. You'll as you continue to pull power and you've run out of power, the rotor, the speed of the main rotor on the top of the helicopter will actually slow down. And what do we know about airplanes? When they slow down too slow, they eventually stall. And so you can actually stall a helicopter the same way you can an airplane by getting that rotor too slow. So when you go up in altitude, there is less volume, or there is less partial pressure of air. That's why when you go up, you see hot air balloons or those silver atmospheric balloons. They get much bigger. Weather balloons do the same thing because they're trying to equalize the pressure outside. So as you go up, the pressure goes down, and so that balloon will get bigger. So thinking about that, you'll have less air volume and less pressure entering your engine. So you'll actually have to lean out the amount of fuel to have a combustible mixture. And so when you get less and less fuel to an engine, you end up slowing it down. And so you actually have to add more to speed it up, but there's just not enough air there to supply it. So basically, as you go up, horsepower goes down. And so you can't lift as heavy of a load. You don't have as quick a reaction time with the blades because of the air pressure and stuff. So it sometimes can feel a little bit mushy. The controls will a little bit. But the main thing is the weight. You just you can't take a big, giant, heavy load like you can, off the beach at sea level up there. So that was really the other kind of operational limitation there. And so down low, you got tons of performance. Up high, you don't. So you have to take things slower, take less weight. Anyway, that's basically the gist of it there. That's the difference between high and low altitude. So,
right. Very interesting. Now you have sent us some pictures to look at. Did you take these yourself, or did someone else at the place do it?
Some of them were taken by myself. I believe the one picture, the first picture, was kind of like the sunset-y looking thing.
Yeah.
That was in the western part of the country, and that was taken by my wife, actually. She went over there for about 3 weeks and kind of flew around with me and saw some of the country. And so, yeah, she got to be a photographer for a little bit as well.
Nice. So where was that picture taken? You said a western side of the country, but like, can you orient us a little bit with that first one?
Sure. Yeah, so when I was on the western side of the country, I was doing a lot of rescues as well. But one of the things I did was I was stationed in a town called Simikot, and it's the far northwest corner of Nepal. And when I was over there, I was taking Hindu passengers on their circumnavigation, kind of like the Muslim community. They go to Mecca to circumnavigate the rock. The Hindus have kind of the same thing. And one of those places is called Mount Kailash. That's actually up in Tibet or China. So I would take them up to the border there at a place called Hilsa, and then I would drop them off, and then they would cross the bridge into China and then go circumnavigate the mountain. So that particular picture was just coming back from that's one of those Simikot trips. And so I stayed in Simikot for, I think, maybe 2 months while I was there, servicing those tourists and kind of passengers there. And that was during the kind of the slower part of the season. So there wasn't a lot of trekking and expeditions going on at that point. So we were able to accommodate all those passengers.
Sure. And so the second picture, you have some very nice clouds over a mountain. That's not Everest, but which mountain is that? Which peak is that?
So it's the one with the clouds are kind of down low, and then
yeah, that one.
Yeah. Sorry, I just can't remember which one it is, but some of those pictures were actually of Everest.
Peaks, there's like clouds over the tallest one. That's like 4 peaks, actually.
Yeah, I believe that is a picture of Everest. Is one of them kind of black?
Yeah. The far
Yeah,
left one's kind of black. Yeah. So yeah, it is. I guess it is Everest.
so that's probably one of the. You're probably looking up the valley there. They call it the Valley of Silence, and so there's a big glacier at the bottom of that valley. The left side you have Everest. Right up the middle, you'll have a mountain called Lhotse. It's the fourth highest mountain in the world, and then of course on the right side you'll have Nuptse. And those are actually just named for the Sherpa words. Lhotse means the south sister. Nuptse means the west sister. And of course, those are sisters to Mount Everest. So, which is the Nepali name for that is Sagarmatha.
I'm sure, yeah, and I'm sure, since I'm sitting in here, I'm sure there's someone at home going, I can't believe you didn't know like the configuration of Everest. Like, what kind of adventurer are you? So, I'm sure there's someone thinking that right
well,
now.
Yeah, I sent you so many pictures, so.
Yeah. And so then we have the last picture, which is beautiful mountains on a clear day. Is that Everest again, or is that a different one?
Beautiful mountains on a clear day. I believe that was Everest. I believe, Everest and Lhotse and Nuptse should be over on the left, and then kind of on the right, you got some really sharp, jaggedy looking peaks. So and those are just some other local peaks there. But yeah, you're just looking over the Himalayas. Those really high pictures there were taken during that glacial survey with the couple of Japanese gentlemen that were there. Gotcha. So I was up pretty high. I was up over 20,000 feet taking those pictures.
Wow. And then now the last thing you sent is a video, and we're going to see that. And, the first time I watched this video, my first thought was, man, that blade is close to the camera. So can you tell us a little bit about what's going on here? Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about what this video is? Is that you in the helicopter, and who's taking this video?
Yeah, so that's me in the helicopter I was flying, and so this was during a search and rescue of an Israeli airline VIP. He was kind of a bigwig for the Israeli Airlines. He went missing in the Himalayas, and so I was kind of appointed to the position of the search and rescue pilot for this mission. And we spent about 3 weeks looking for him. During the mornings when the weather was good, I would take different crews so you can see them getting out of the helicopter, and you can notice that far skid is about 2,000 feet off the ground. It's just a sheer cliff right there. So I would take several crews out to the surrounding hills and trails during the morning. I would drop them off, and they would basically work their way back to the base camp that we had set up, looking for this gentleman. And then I would go with the main guy of the Israeli search and rescue firm that came out. They're called Magnus, and it was actually the chief guy, Mr. Magnus. Him and I would go out and just scour the mountains all day long, just looking around and till the weather moved in, of course. And the weather always during that time seemed to move in about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we had to get up bright and early and then continue this mission. We searched anywhere from about 7,000 feet clear up to about 17,000 feet looking for this particular gentleman. So that was some very interesting flying. I had never done so much hovering at one time, just looking at mountains. So it got pretty interesting, and it was fun. That you can see some of the types of landings that I was doing, dropping people off, was just with one skid on because there was no other place to land. So there's no, it's a sheer cliff. So you just find the one kind of flat spot, and you do a really good briefing before you go to let the people know what's going to happen. And then, of course, we already had a crew there that was properly trained on how to shut the door and open the door and stuff, and kind of directed things. So
did they ever find him?
To my knowledge, no. They had kind of talking with different people, there were some different opinions about what might have happened. There was one suggestion that some of the sheep herders and the goat herders were still up on the mountain at that point in time of the year before it got cold. And so when he went missing, I guess he was a VIP of an Israeli airline. So I guess he had maybe some nice attire on, maybe a shiny camera, a shiny watch, that kind of thing. So unfortunately, he could have very well disappeared along with some of his valuables, and then who knows? I mean, that's one idea, because most of the trail that was there, you weren't walking on the side of a cliff, where one wrong step and you're gone. Most of it was pretty okay trails. So that's kind of one of the opinions that I had heard, or maybe the stories that I heard. So
now, we spoke a little bit before we got on here. Is there a story you'd like to tell? Any other thing that you'd like to touch on?
Sure. I got to take part in some heli skiing. I was basically the glorified ski lift. And it lasted about a month. I was working with Craig Kalanica. He is a kind of world-renowned ski guide. He used to go up Everest. He was on one of the first hang glider expeditions up to Everest to try to hang glide off the summit. He's a great skier. He actually lives in Chamonix in France. But anyway, during that ski season, one of the mornings, we would stay down in Pokhara, in kind of the main city near the Annapurna Range. And we would wait at the airport until if the weather looked good, then we would load up and we would head up into the mountains for the day for the skiing. And one morning it was pretty low weather, not very good. I made some phone calls up the mountain to see how it was looking, try to get some, kind of weather reports. And it just wasn't looking good for us. So we decided to eat there at the airport. They had kind of a rooftop restaurant there. And so we were all kind of sitting out on the restaurant and eating and having a good time, just kind of waiting for the weather to clear, hopefully. And I ended up watching a pilot go out and pre-flight his airplane. It was a Twin Otter, and so it would hold about 20 people. And then about half an hour later, he loaded up his airplane and took off. And I was kind of distraught a little bit, because I had watched that airplane for several months and I knew exactly where he was going. So he was heading up to the village of Jumsum, which is kind of in the Mustang area of Nepal, kind of north central, maybe a little to the west. But anyway, he was heading up there, and so some of the clients kind of saw him take off and go in the direction that we were actually trying to go. And so they started kind of giving me a hard time, like, hey, like, he's flying, why can't we fly? Like, we don't understand. And I said, well, I bet you in 10 minutes he'll be back. And so we actually started taking kind of funny bets, like how long we would think before he came back, before he turned around, because the weather was bad. Well, a half hour went by, and fortunately, the control tower there at Pokhara Airport is right above the restaurant. And so the controllers looked down and could see that I was still there. And I was the only helicopter that was based at the airport at that time. And so they came down and said, hey, this airplane never showed up at the other airport. Can you go look for him? And so I got on the phone to my company saying, hey, this is what we got going on. They made some other phone calls. And then one of the ski guides that I was working with, his name's Jason Torlano. He was a paramedic. He's from Lake Tahoe. So, he's an American guy. And so he ended up going with me. And then one of my other grounds crew that spoke Nepali could come with to kind of interpret for us. But we spent about the next 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, just flying around, just looking. I knew the route that he was trying to go, the particular valley. And so we just flew that route, and the weather was horrible. It was about 300 or 400 foot off the bottom of the deck. And so we were only at 9,000 feet. This guy should have been flying up at 14,000 feet. So unfortunately, the captain that was flying this aircraft had probably more time on this specific route than any other person on the planet. I think he had 20 or 30,000 hours, so very experienced guy. We had landed at a few villages during the search, and just to inquire, like, hey, did you hear the airplane go by? Because there's one valley in, one valley out. Like, there's only one way to get up there. So, anyway, we landed finally at the village of Dana, which is in this particular valley, by the way, is the deepest gorge in the world. To the west, you have Dalagidi, which is a 27,000 foot mountain. And to the east, you have Annapurna 1, which is the 10th highest mountain in the world at 26,000 or so. So, and the bottom of that valley where they intersect is actually only about 5,000 or 6,000 feet. So basically, you have a 20,000 foot gorge that you're trying to fly through. So we landed at the village of Dana. They said, yeah, we heard a big boom, and they pointed up at the mountain, and that was kind of the sign that, okay, this is probably where this guy's at, or where they, unfortunately probably hit the mountain. So the weather was too bad. We made a couple of attempts to go kind of peek up there and see what we could see, and we just couldn't find anything. It turns out we had gotten pretty close to the aircraft, but it was just in a clouded part of the valley. We just had no visibility to it. So we had to wait until the next day. And I had gone back to Pokhara to drop off, my search and rescue crew that I made, and then bring out a bunch of executives from the Nepali Civil Aviation Association, kind of like their FAA. Brought some of those guys out to the village. Brought some of the executives of the airline out there, and so. Anyway, the next morning, we all stayed out there, and then the next morning the weather had cleared, and we proceeded to haul a bunch of police and climbers. So we had a special team of Sherpa climbers come out to basically manage the recovery, and they were good on the ropes and stuff. So because this where the plane crashed, it was in a pretty treacherous point. It was pretty vertical, so they had to bring in a specialty team. And then we spent the next morning taking 23 souls off the mountain. And from, we'd go up, and they had cleared just a tiny little spot, the only flat spot in the whole side of the mountain there. They had to cut a bunch of trees, and we hauled them all down, and we took the seats out of the back of the helicopter, and basically just piled the bodies in the back of the helicopter, and I had a basket on to carry skis at the time because we were in the middle of ski season, and so we were able to utilize that as well in my helicopter. We did have one more helicopter come up there and help us out from our company. So another pilot that worked there that was another expat was Andrew Gutzel. He's a Kiwi, so. Anyway, so he helped us out, and we got all the bodies off, and then we spent the next part of that day kind of figuring out who went where, and we delivered some of the bodies to different villages, depending on where they were from, or all back to Kathmandu if that was the case. So anyway, that was kind of a rough time there for all of us to be a part of something like that. Unfortunately, those types of crashes happen every so often there. It happens more often than it does here. I'll say that. So just big mountains, a lot of weather, and it's unfortunate aviation accidents. So.
Yeah, very sad. So how long after that did you stay in Nepal? Did you leave pretty soon afterward, or were you there to stick around for a little while longer?
No, I was there for quite a long time after that. So I had gotten there in October of 2015, and this happened in February.
Okay, so you were there for a while.
Yeah, and then I didn't leave until like November of 2016. So I was there for another 8-9 months.
Gotcha.
So, and then in Nepal, things kind of slow down a little bit in the summer because that's when the monsoon comes up from kind of the Indian Ocean there, up from Asia, or up from India, I mean. So I actually was able to go home during the middle of the summer for a month. And then I had to go back up there and finish out my contract with the company. So, but yeah, a lot of interesting flying up there and stuff that, you know, there's a lot of helicopter pilots and airplane pilots that all over the world that fly all day. But there's just nothing better than the old kind of cowboy flying, kind of flying by the seat of your pants. There's not a lot of planning you can do. A lot of times I would get told, hey, we think that there's this many people and we think that there's in this village, but nobody's ever been there to this particular village. So good luck, figure it out. Like, so I was doing all my own fuel planning, all my own departing. I mean, I was starting up, you know, shutting down, getting people in, getting people out. It was all myself. And then we also did actually have a couple of co-pilots that were there at the time. Some of the younger Nepalis that had gone off to other countries to get their flight training. They had come back into Nepal to work for some of the companies there, and so they would be my co-pilot. I was really instructing them more or less on, you know, commercial operations, but they would kind of be, you know, riding along with me quite a lot. So that was kind of fun to just watch them grow. And when I left, a couple of them had met the requirements to become captain. So that was pretty cool to watch. So
Now, can we plug either of the companies that you've worked for, either the one in Alaska or the one in Nepal? Do you have a name? Is there anything we can promote for them?
Yeah. So Temsco Helicopters is up. They're based out of Ketchikan. They operate tours out of Skagway and Juneau. I believe they started operating out of north of Anchorage somewhere, maybe Talkeetna. But they're a great utility company at their roots. And then ever since kind of about the 90s, they started developing a better tour base. So they do a large tour operation there now. And then the company there in Nepal is based out of Kathmandu, as most of the companies there are. It's called Air Dynasty Helicopter Services. And that was the high mountain rescue team I was a part of, was there in Kathmandu. So, yeah, a couple of great companies, and they're both growing, and they're both just, you know, doing good work. So
sure, and we'll include those websites in the description of this video so you can check it out when if you want to, if you're ever in the area and want a helicopter tour. And what about you, man? What are you up to now?
So the last couple of years, I've been in Oklahoma, actually. When I came back from Nepal, I just needed a job, and so I had a buddy that was flying here for a company called Air Evac Life Team, and it's just an EMS company. We've got about 150 helicopters right now, scattered through. Oklahoma is about the farthest west we go, but scattered clear to the East Coast, and, you know, clear over to Georgia and up to, you know, West Virginia, kind of all that area there. And just an EMS outfit. I'm based out of Kingfisher, Oklahoma, and Air Evac 131. So it's about a 30-minute drive from my house in Oklahoma City. So nice little commute there. And I just got married last year, and got a little critter on the way, a little baby on the way, and
congratulations.
Bought a house. So just living life, man.
Life. Well, congratulations, man. Thank you for coming on. You heard it, folks. Outside Oklahoma City. If you ever need a helicopter ride, you know who to call. Thank you so much for joining, Jimmy. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
If you like the content you saw today, please consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. It helps us out a ton. We put out videos every Thursday, and we'll hope to see you all soon. Till then, have a great day. Bye-bye.